Good evening, family. Peace and blessings to you. We are back for another Wednesday in our Black History series. We are so excited about it. It's been just wonderful for these um, 3 weeks, and now we're in this fourth week, and it's just been great. It's just been great, and each presenter for each and every week has just been phenomenal. And for that, we are just really, really grateful and just excited. So, as usual, we're gonna wait for a few more folks to get on. You guys, excuse me. Usually, I have a little camera that's working properly, but for some reason my camera isn't working properly. So I'm using my laptop camera. So sorry if it looks a little bit different. It looks a little bit different because it is a little bit different, but we'll make it do what it do. So sorry about that. But so we'll wait for a few more folks to go on. So these individual presentations, we started off with Pastor Gabby Wilkes, and she really got into that thing about defending the faith, knowing where you come from, and she dealt with Jude. And that was just a really powerful presentation. Then we had the Sibley family, Marcus and Crystal, and they talked about social justice and civil rights, specifically here in New Jersey, and the role of the church. And that's just really, really powerful as well. And then last week, Dr. Marcus Jerkins was here, and he was really giving us a summary of his book, Black Lives Matter to Jesus. And so just really, really powerful stuff for Black History Month. And we're closing out tonight. Y'all know it. It's going down here with Dr. Wallis Baxter III. And so we are just waiting for a couple more folks to get on. And then it is going down here. I'm really excited about what's going down because, you know, I'll get into the introduction and all that stuff, but Dr. Baxter is that dude. And you guys know it from his last couple years being here, especially his insight on the history, the poetry, the influence and impact of the great Phyllis Wheatley. And so we're just really, really grateful for his scholarship and his gift to the body of Christ and to this world. And so good evening. I see folks coming in. Good to see you in the chat, everyone. Blessings and peace for Crowder and Teresa, Doris, Marvina, Brenda, Ruthie. Hey, good to see each and every one of you. Good to see you, Rose. And so what we're going to do is wait for a couple more people to come on in. What's up, sis? Good to see you joining in. Pauline, blessings to you. Wait for just a couple more folks, and then we'll reach that number, and then more folk will join as they come in and all that good stuff. But we want to go ahead and get started. So yeah, we're at a good number. We can get going now. So again, peace and blessings. We're here this Wednesday night. Time to get started. We have the great Dr. Wallace Baxter III here with us. He's in the virtual building. And so we're grateful to God for this Bible study tonight. So he needs no introduction. He's in the DMV, pastoring, doing some really wonderful stuff. Has education at Morehouse and Duke and Howard, and got a new book out as well. We were just talking about it on the side, how it's been pushed back a couple times, but you can pre-order it, and he'll probably talk about that. So I'll give that to him. But he's really doing some powerful stuff, and then he has some other works that are coming out as well on pandemic preaching. And so the dude is the truth. That's all I can say. He's the truth. So I'm gonna get on out the way and let our brother come back. So Dr. Wallace Baxter III is on. Y'all love on him.
What's going on, TBC family, Tabernacle family? It's always good to be here with you all. I truly am just grateful to be able to share with you. It's always a joy to be with you all, to be with my brother, Pastor Corey. We're just grateful for the work that you all are doing there in New Jersey, and we're just grateful to be in fellowship with you all. And Yeah, I don't know what it is, but apparently in this season, God has some interesting things going on in my life, including got a book coming out, and I'll share with you all later in the chat what where you can go to pre-order that if you so desire. And it's called Phyllis Wheatley as Prophetic Poet. You must be born again. And so we're excited about that. It's coming out. And then the pandemic preaching book that Pastor Corey mentioned is one that he actually is a contributor to. And so one of his sermons is in that book. And so when it comes out, we certainly urge you to get it, as your pastor is published in that book or will be published in that book. And so we're looking forward to that, preaching during the pandemic, sermons from the Black preaching tradition. And of course, your pastor is one of God's best. And so I'm grateful that he is contributing to that volume, to that body of work. So let's open up with a word of prayer, and then we'll jump right in. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far along the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into that light, keep us in this moment of study, keep us in this moment of engagement, of conversation, of exploration. Allow us to open up the pages of your divine word and allow those words to leap from the pages and find resonance in our hearts, minds, souls, and spirits. God, allow us to dig deep, to see more of you, to experience more of you, and to learn more of you. Have your way, God. Do what you do. And we'll be careful to give your name all the praise, honor, and glory. It's in the matchless, marvelous name of Jesus, who is still the Christ, that we do pray. And every heart said, amen. Amen. So I'm just excited to be with you all once again tonight. And I believe there is an important message I have to share tonight, and it's one that the church skirts around sometimes. I mean, we talk about it in our social circles, but not all the time in the church. So tonight we want to dig into it a little bit, and I really just want to wet your whistle and whet your appetite, and hopefully it will cause you to dig even deeper moving forward. So I want to talk about the sin of white supremacy. The sin of white supremacy, and subtitle Christianity in American Face, right? So this idea, we all know what blackface is, right? Blackface, of course, during the early 20th century, well, really late 19th going into the 20th century, there was this idea of blackface that people would, white people would paint their faces black in order to appear as though they were black. Of course, their faces were not brown like most of our skin tone. Their faces were literally black. They used coal and tar and soot and all these other things to color themselves black. And so when I say the sin of white supremacy, Christianity in American Face, the argument is that white people in America have managed to paint Christianity American. Managed to paint Christianity American, to actually put Christianity in an American face, as opposed to letting Christianity be what Christianity is. So I want to talk about this a little bit. I want to get into it a little bit and see kind of where we end up at the end of this discussion. So I want to start with Psalm 137. Psalm 137 is a somewhat familiar psalm to many of us, I'm sure. And I just want to read it for you because it's real short. Psalm 137 says, by the waters of Babylon, there we sat down and wept when we remembered Zion. On the willows, there we hung up our lyres. For there our captors required of us songs. and our tormentors mirth, saying, sing us one of the songs of Zion. How shall we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget its skill. Let my tongue stick to the roof of my mouth. If I do not remember you, if I do not set Jerusalem above my joy. Remember, O Lord, against the Edomites, the day of Jerusalem, how they said, lay it bare, down to its foundations. O daughter of Babylon, doomed to be destroyed, blessed shall he be who repays you with what you have done to us. Blessed shall he be who takes your little ones and dashes them against the rock. How shall we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? How shall we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land? How shall we sing the Lord's song in a land in which we are not truly welcome? That's the backdrop of what's going on in Psalm 137, is that the Babylonians are there and they're saying to the children of Israel, sing us one of those songs of Zion. We want to hear you sing. We want to see you dance. We want to hear all of this from you. And the question becomes, how can we do that in this strange land? Now, the idea is that we know our people have managed to do it. Just like these Israelites managed to sing despite oppression, managed to sing, managed to praise, managed to worship despite oppression and all the things that were against them. We too have to do the same thing. And we've seen it over time, and we still see it today, that we too sing even though we're in this strange land. So basically what I want to do tonight is talk about how this land became strange. Because if God created the land, if God created all that's in it, then it's our home. So how in the world does it become strange? How in the world does it become foreign? How in the world does it become an unwelcoming space if indeed it and we are created by God? If it and we are created by God, then we're supposed to be comfortable in this land. So how is discomfort manufactured in a land that's supposed to be comfortable? That's really what I want to get into tonight. And so this next slide, we have to ask the question, what does it mean to be Christian? And what is discipleship? Basically, throughout, as the backdrop for what I'm going to share tonight, these two questions should be our guide. What does it mean to be Christian? And what really is discipleship? And how do these individuals that we're going to look at and these other statements that we look at, how do they live up to that standard of Christianity, ultimately of discipleship? Because sometimes it is true that every Christian is not a disciple. So we that discipleship piece is key, because we have to be disciples if we're going to really live into what it means to be authentically Christian. And so that's what we're going to look at tonight. And so I want to look at the case of this white man, Aaron Augustus Sargent. I want to look at the case of Aaron Augustus Sargent. So in 1878, on the floor of the U.S. Senate, Senator Aaron Augustus Sargent, A.A. Sargent, rolled out a plan to ban immigration to the United States from China. This came at a time when the Chinese had already arrived in large numbers on the west coast of America, helping to settle the land under U.S. control and connecting this new part of the nation to the old through their work of the Transcontinental Railroad. We know those stories from history. And so Sargent gets on the floor and he begins to make his argument And his argument was that by their customs and by their way of life and their religion, the Chinese could not be assimilated into a white Christian nation. His plan was that Christian missionaries travel to China and wash their robes and make them white in the blood of the Lamb. That's a direct quote from A.A. Sargent. He wanted Christian missionaries from America to go to China, wash their robes, and make them white in the blood of the Lamb. Then, being fit for citizenship, the Chinese might apply for citizenship. In other words, at this stage in 1878, A.A. Sargent is saying, if you're not white and you're not Christian, you can't be American, which means to be American, you have to be white and Christian. Back at this time, that narrative is being set, it's being articulated in the U.S. Senate. No wonder we have elected officials today doing some of the same things, talking about what it means to be an American and who can and cannot. And behind it all, behind the rhetoric of what it means to be an American, is also this underlying rhetoric of what it means to be a Christian. They have conflated American with Christian. In other words, they have put an American face over Christianity, such that Christianity now is the gateway to becoming American. Conform to us first, and then we'll allow you to come in, is basically what he's saying. But that's not discipleship. Jesus never said, all right, stop fishing, be like me, and then follow me. Jesus said, drop your nets, follow me. He didn't say nothing about changing your ways. He didn't say nothing about changing your worldview. Didn't say anything about changing how you look at the world and go about what. No, he didn't say any of that, because it wasn't about that. What it was about was following by faith Jesus in order to get to the destination God has for you. Jesus was not going to work that out for people, because God isn't the type of God who works that out for you. No, God simply says, follow me, and as you're going, I'll work everything out. Don't believe me? Proverbs 3:5-6, it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, mind, so with all your heart, and lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge God, and God will direct your path, or God will make your path straight. In the original Hebrew language of that text, it basically means that as you're walking, God straightens your path. And look, even if you refuse to go along that path, as you're walking, God has a way of straightening you out while you're on your crooked path. And so either way you look at it, God gets you to your desired destination, but it starts with a commitment of free will, a commitment of free will, not of coercion, not of force feeding or anything like that. Jesus simply says, follow me and I will make you a different type of fisher. You don't have to figure out how to fish for men on your own. You don't have to sign some documentation to say that you're no longer going to fish for fish, but you're going to fish for men. No. All you have to do is follow me, and I'll make you fishers of men. I'll get you there. As long as you follow me, as long as you follow me and do like Ludacris said, as long as you move when I move, just like that, then you will become fishers of men. And so A.A. Sargent sets the tone for what it means to be Christian and American. And so the next slide, we look at the ideology of a white Christian nation. It is a construct. I want you to hear me clearly. It is a construct. It's something that is constructed, something that is built. It's not something that evolved naturally. No, it is a construct. It's something that was built, and it starts with the idea of race. Starts with the idea of race. And so to really unpack this, I want to kind of talk about really some current events, right? Current events, what's going on right now that we hear in the news all over the place, in court cases and on and on and on. And it's something that I think ties a lot of what the journey that Tabernacle has been going on this month rather, through defending the faith and what it means to really live into this call, this mandate for social justice and civil rights, and how yes, Black lives do matter to Jesus. All these things they come to a head under this umbrella of what folks, what is a buzzword right now, which is critical race theory, right? So I want to talk about how does critical race theory factor in? How does critical race theory factor in? How does it factor in all this? See, there's this case, of course, in Mississippi with Ole Miss Law School. They are teaching critical race theory. They are the only institution in the state of Mississippi that is teaching critical race theory. Now, let me say something about critical race theory. Critical race theory was something that was founded by Derek Bell and others, and back in the 80s, late 80s, really, and it kind of evolved through some study in law school by law professors studying what it means to be Black in America, and not just Black, but minority in America. And they began to look at various things and came up with kind of a formula for some things that we see and can expect in America. It's literally an academic discipline that teaches lawyers, in this case, in the legal field, how to recognize injustice and racism when they see it. It's not something that's taught in elementary school. It's not something that's taught in middle school. It's not something that's taught in high school. I teach at the college level. I teach in graduate school. It's not taught in college or graduate school. It is literally something that is taught in law school, and pretty much only law school. Now, granted, teachers like me will bring it up in class just because I like to stir up the stew a little bit and see what happens. But critical race theory, if we go to the next slide, we see kind of basic tenets of critical race theory. It's important because it deals with this idea of ordinariness, right? Ordinariness basically says that being Black, being othered is ordinary. Race is ordinary, that race is something that it's just a way of life. Now, you go to other countries, race is not necessarily a way of life. Difference, yes. Diversity, yes. They recognize tribal differences and economic differences and other kinds of differences, but they do not recognize race as a difference. And so when we look at critical race theory, ordinariness is important. Then there's this interest convergence theory, right? Interest convergence basically says that we make you Black. We make you Black because it suits our interest. It's convenient for us to oppress you because it helps us rise. The dominant culture does that. It's something that did not start with critical race theory. Frantz Fanon talked about this in his books black skin, white mask, and the wretched of the earth. He talks about how the colonizer always wants to do whatever is necessary to benefit the colonizer. The oppressed then have to fall victim to whatever the colonizer is talking about. And then there's this social construction theory, this idea that race is a construct, that it is a construct, and it's a social construct. It's not a biological construct. There is no major biological differences between human beings of different races, but there is social differences. And so we've constructed this matrix of difference in order to remain on top. That's basically what it means. And then differential racialization, that I highlight your difference when it's convenient for me to highlight your difference. I bring it up in order to make sure that people know that you're not white Christian American. Make sure that you are something else, right? And so that's where all these different things come in about Blackness, Hispanic, LGBTQ, all those things come in order to oppress others, correct? And then this idea of intersectionality, anti-essentialism, is this idea that the reality is nobody can be relegated as a single race, as a monolith, right? There's diversity everywhere. There's diversity in the Black community. There's diversity in the Hispanic community. There's diversity in the Asian community. There's diversity in the white community. But that diversity and intersectionality is overlooked when it's not convenient for those in power. Because think about it. Intersectionality. You can be Black, wealthy, and a third generation college student. You can be white, poor, homosexual. You can be Hispanic, female, and a first generation college student on their way to being an entrepreneur. Intersectionality, all these different things coming and converging together. And the thing is, the dominant culture can't handle appreciating the intersectionality of anybody other than them, and so they make us be one thing, just Black, Hispanic, Asian, whatever it is, and thereby make themselves non-intersectional, make themselves a monolith, make themselves static. And so when we critique them, we're able to say, yeah, white people do X, white people are Y, because they've created that for themselves in order to remain dominant. And then this voice of color thesis, the last thing is that basically that you can speak for the race. I can speak for the race. Have you ever been like the only Black person in a room? And you're the only Black person in the room, and something comes up about race, and then they say, "Isn't that right, Cheryl?" And you're like, "Why are you asking me? Like I speak for all Black people or all Black women or whatever it is." No. I'm not that person. I'm not the one to speak for the entire race. And to think that anybody can speak for an entire race is a misnomer, because that's not true, because we all have so much to offer and we all travel different paths. The thing that does unite us is that we are, yes, commonly oppressed, but your oppression is different from my oppression. My oppression is different from my wife's oppression. My wife's oppression is different from my son's oppression, on and on and on. It's diversity within community. And so it's so vitally important to understand that with all this stuff going on in the news, all this craziness happening, that the reason there's this backlash, this pushback, or what have you, is because it defies the dominant narrative and construct of what it means to be white and Christian in America. In other words, what it means to be American. Now, this next slide, I want y'all to look at this for a minute. This is an image called or entitled America by Jan van der Straat. It was done in around 1600. Now, if you look at the image, it's a very complex portrait, painting. What you see as you're looking at it, on the left side, you see ships with flags coming probably from some foreign country. You see a woman there who's naked, clearly indigenous to this area because she's comfortable in a hammock on that tree, chilling. See in the background, in the distant background, some other naked individuals got their own fire going, look like they're chilling, roasting some kind of meat that may even be a human leg or arm or something. And then you see animals roaming around. You see a spear next to the woman. And then you see this man, clearly not from here, dressed in this garb. He's got a sword. He's got this a compass or some kind of learning tool in his hand. Then he's got this staff with a flag on the end. And at the top of that flag, that staff rather, is a cross. That cross is at the top of the flag. You ever heard anybody say that they're doing something for God and country? That's what this mission to colonize America really ended up being. An enterprise for God and country, a race for establishing new territory for God and country. 1600, that image is depicted. We know for a fact that some of the first slaves arrived in the Americas around that time. So there's a major enterprise going on of conquest and of creating new territory at the expense of people that are not like the colonizers. I don't know what happened to those natives, but because we know American history, we do know what happened. Those individuals were probably pushed off their land. Those individuals were probably told that they could exchange certain goods and be in community with the colonizers, not realizing that they came to conquer. They came to conquer, to conquest. And the cross stands at the top of it all. The cross stands at the top of it all. The next slide simply says that theology, the cross, theology is used as the building block. Theology is used as the building block. Genesis 1:28 is something that we know very well. We read it all the time. It says very simply, and God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. This is what God calls us to do in creation. This is what God says we are to do. We are to settle the land. We're to subdue it. And we are to be fruitful and multiply. Now, last time I checked, when God said be fruitful and multiply, God didn't say who to be fruitful and multiply with. But there's a way that the dominant culture has read this text, starting with John Winthrop. That name that sounds familiar, John Winthrop, the Puritan governor of the Massachusetts colony. John Winthrop, he actually used Genesis 1:28 and said, as his blueprint for colonization, he said that God had given the land to sons of men with a general condition: increase and multiply, replenish the earth, and subdue it. And since native inhabitants had not cultivated the subdued land, God's plan could be rightly carried out only by Christian colonialists. It's this idea that because y'all haven't subdued the land, because y'all don't have the buildings that we have in England, because you don't have the cobblestone roads and the streetcars that we have in England and the ships that we have and on and on and on, because y'all don't have all that, then you're clearly not using the land the right way. But wait a minute. They were alive, weren't they? They were doing quite well, weren't they? They had built community. They had done things. Yeah, they might not have had the latest cell phone, the latest Apple Watch and all this stuff, but they knew how to get a message from point A to point B. They knew how to do what they needed to do. This is where gentrification comes in, right? Because you're not developing your community the way we want you to develop your community. We're going to come in and develop it for you. Now, this thing, in order to develop it for you, you got to go somewhere while we do that. And lo and behold, when you try to come back, it's not going to be affordable. It's not going to be accessible, right? That's how they use theology as a building block for this enterprise of supremacy. That's how they use theology as a building block. Now, so this next slide, I can't do this without mentioning my girl, Phyllis Wheatley. We've talked in previous years, last 2 years, we talked about the curse of Cain, Ham, and all of that, and this matrix. And Phyllis has a way of righting the ship, right? In this poem in particular, I'm being brought from Africa to America. She says, "'Twas mercy brought me from my pagan land, taught my benighted soul to understand that there's a God, that there's a Savior too. Once I redemption neither sought nor knew. Some view our sable race with a scornful eye. Their color is a diabolic dye. Remember, Christians, Negroes, black as Cain, may be refined and join the angelic train." Those last two lines, remember, Christians, Negroes, black as Cain, may be refined and join the angelic train. Phyllis Wheatley is turning the Eurocentric way of reading the narrative of Cain and Ham and others on its head by saying, remember, Christians and Negroes, both black as Cain, may be refined and join the angelic train. It's this idea that everyone has access. Everyone is able to be saved. Everyone is able to be a child of God. Everyone is able to share in the American dream. That's what this is about. That's what has been constructed, right? And to make matters worse, next slide, make matters worse, there are philosophers that have come up with their own kind of mechanism for determining what it means to be black, what it means to be white, for race in America. Immanuel Kant, that can't be right. Immanuel Kant says very simply that after using Genesis 1:28 in the Genesis creation narrative and the story of Adam and Eve as backdrop, he says very simply that there are four races emerging: the white race, the Negro race, the Hun race, and the Hindu or Hindustani race. All humanity shares a common origin, but it is the white race that Kant assessed as having developed closest to the original perfection of Adam and Eve. Hold up. Perfection? Adam and Eve? Perfection? That's what Kant argues. Around this same time, 19th century, that's what Kant argues. Kant argues that white folk are the closest to Adam and Eve. It's interesting that you would be able to make that claim. One of my former professors, J. Cameron Carter, he kind of weighs in on this, and he talks about the fact that for Kant, Christianity as a rational religion and Christ as the personified idea of the good principle are the guarantee that whiteness, understood not merely and banally as pigment, but as a structural aesthetic order and as a socio-political arrangement, can and will be instantiated in the people who continue Christ's work, the work of Western civilization. In other words, they have created a theologic that makes sense to them, not a theology, a theologic that makes sense to them. They have allowed themselves to believe that God has created them to be greater than anyone else. This 18th century philosopher put that out there like that. He said that the American Indian people cannot be formed. They are not able to receive education. They lack affect and passion. They hardly ever speak. They also care for nothing, and they are lazy. Wait a minute. How you going to come to my house and tell me I'm lazy? If I want to lounge around all day at my house, that's my prerogative. Bobby Brown, shout out. That's my prerogative. If I want to lie around at my house and do my own thing, you can't police me in my house unless it's not my house. Unless the moment you show up, it becomes your house. The Negro race, Kant says, are given to intense and is full of affect and passion, quite vivacious, talkative, and vain. They can be educated, but only to be a servant. That is to say, they can be trained. We can be trained. All right. The Hindus, Kant says, are given to intense anger and to love. They can be trained to the highest degree, but only to the arts, not the sciences. The Hindus always remain the same way. They will never make progress, even if they had gotten an earlier start in educating themselves. It's Hindus. And then the race of whites contains within itself all motivations and talents. Full stop. No more description. He literally leaves it at that when describing the white race. The white race contains within it all motivations and talents. In other words, cannot be checked, cannot be critiqued, cannot be educated, cannot be enhanced, cannot develop because they have arrived. White people are all that and a bag of chips plus the red Kool-Aid is basically what Kant is saying. So that's his philosophical assessment. What does that mean for us? Next slide. The fact that white intellectuals have laid out for us that difference equals deficient. What are we to do? When difference equals deficient. Next slide. What are we to do? What in the world are we to do? Glad you asked the question. And this brings us toward our close. We are to turn to the cross. We're to turn to the cross. Why did I say that? You remember in that Van der Stray illustration, the cross stood at the top of everything because all that was done, all that was said was done for God and country. The cross is the emblem that they choose to use to dominate. So I feel the cross ought to be the emblem that we choose to use to rise, that we choose to use to rebuild, that we choose to use to redirect and baptize. The cross has to be the be-all, end-all for us. That image there is of the veil torn in two, the veil of the temple torn in two. It's something that we all know from Matthew's gospel. This image of the veil torn in two. Yes, Matthew 27. And there, beginning with verse 45, it simply says, "Now from the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, 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 lama sabachthani, which is, my God, why have you forsaken me? And some of the bystanders, hearing it, said, This man is calling Elijah. And one of them at once ran and took a sponge, filled it with sour wine, and put it on a reed and gave it to him to drink. But the other said, Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to save him. And Jesus cried out again, and with a loud voice he yielded up his spirit. And behold," verse 51, "the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth shook, and the rocks were split." Something happened while Jesus was on the cross. In that moment, there's a transaction that takes place between humanity and divinity, between darkness and light, between access and inaccess. There's something that takes place. That last slide, it puts us in the veil. There's something about this veil. That image is an image of W.B. Du Bois. Of course, in 1903, wrote The Souls of Black Folk. In it, he talks about a veil. And he says something interesting about this veil. He says, after the Egyptian, Indian, the Greek, Roman, the Teuton, the Mongolian, the Negro is a sort of seventh son, born with the veil and gifted with second sight in this American world, a world which yields him no true self-consciousness, but only lets him see himself through the revelation of the other world. It is a peculiar sensation, this double consciousness, this sense of always looking at oneself through the eyes of others, of measuring one's soul by the tape of a world that looks on in amused contempt and pity. One ever feels his two-ness, an American, a Negro, two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals in one dark body, whose dog strength alone keeps it from being torn asunder. I believe that this idea of the veil, juxtaposed to the cross, is significant for us because it lets us see that what our calling is, what our job is, what we are called to do in this season is to live within the veil in order to see both sides, expose both sides, articulate both sides, and remind both sides that the veil is torn. The veil is torn. It's torn in two, which means, particularly, the veil in the temple is torn in two, which means now the holies of holies, we all have access to that. That they're places of inaccessibility that are now accessible to all of us because the veil is torn. Make that apply to everything if you're going to actually read the Bible and actually study and actually talk about how the Bible applies to life on the ground, instead of just picking and choosing and saying, yes, we are the Adam and Eve of the world today. No. You have to understand that something happens on the cross that totally obliterates the reality of Adam and Eve, to the point that now all our reality is tied up in Jesus and Jesus alone. Our reality, who we are, whose we are, what we can do, what we can be, is all tied up in Jesus. And Jesus is the only one I know of that always told everybody that they mattered. Jesus is the only one that told everybody he encountered, you are important. As a matter of fact, his disciples even told him, don't worry about that. They're just no. Somebody touched me. I'm not going to move on until I meet this need. I'm not going to move on until I help them rise as well. I'm trying to show the people in the land, Jesus is saying, that the veil is being torn. No longer are Samaritans the other. No longer are the Romans bad. No longer are the Babylonians bad. No longer are the scribes and Pharisees all bad. No, God is trying to set this thing up through me in a way that we all are equal. That's Bible. That's Bible. Through one sin, through one man, all creation sins. Through one man, all creation is redeemed. We are redeemed through Christ. It's a dual redemption. As Phyllis Wheatley said, it's redemption available for Christians and Negroes. It's a dual redemption. And so the way we go about combating white supremacy, the way we go about taking the American face off of Christianity, point to the cross. Talk about what the cross really is. Talk about what really happens at Calvary. At last and did my Savior die. He did at Calvary. He died. And so our job is to commit fully to him. Our job is to be disciples above all else. Because if we're disciples, we're Christians. Sometimes we get in the habit of doing what is Christian without being disciples. We don't want to do that. That's what they do. We don't want to do that. We want to be disciples so that we can live into our Christianity and live that shalom life. We want to be disciples above all else. So I don't know if we got some time, maybe a few minutes for one or two questions, I guess. I got a little, it got to me. I didn't mean to do all that.
Hey man, listen, this your show, brother. This is good stuff, man. This is good stuff. Any questions in the chat? Any questions? Throw it out there. Yo, man, I'm gonna tell you what you're saying is so true, and it's been a pet peeve of mine. I knew it was there, but it wasn't until it was a few years ago. I was watching the news, and they were interviewing this lady in Florida, and she said, I'm a Republican. She says, I vote Republican because I'm a Christian. And I went like, I knew that was brewing, but to see it actually spoken, like messed me up. And let me be clear, I'm not saying you're a Christian if you vote Democrat.
No.
I think that's ridiculous. I think it has nothing to do with political party or anything.
No,
It's
no,
just it's two separate things.
it
So
is.
to bring those together,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's that Americanism. America the Beautiful, and I'm a Christian.
Yes, yes. It's tied together. My Americanness and my Christianness is one and the same. They are one and the same.
Wow. So there's a question actually from my sister in Cali. She says, "What do
Okay.
you think will change this narrative, especially in the church?"
That's a good question. I think in the church, because particularly today we see this whole divide between the Southern Baptist denomination and all the other Baptists, basically, as what it has become. And the challenge with it is you actually have to uh, tap into people's consciousness to a level where they don't just hear it, but they feel it. Unfortunately, that's what it's going to take. Sometimes you don't know that something is hot that you have said is cold until you touch it, until it
Mm,
hits you in that. And so it's unfortunate, but it's a reality. I think we're gonna have to find ways for them to actually feel it and experience it in some way. And really, that's why I said we got to turn to the cross. We got, because only God can take them through that type of crucifixion. Um, we can preach it, we can teach it, we can share it as much as we can, but God ends up taking them through that crucifixion. And this is where I think that internships, things like that, particularly for like clergy in seminary, helps. And it's something I'm going to talk to you all's pastor about, Pastor Corey, because working at the seminary now, I'm trying to put people in position in certain churches where they can get the real deal and actually understand this stuff, because it's real. It's real.
wow.
I think I saw another question pop up. I don't know.
You said,
Yeah, what let's see. Is it a coincidence that Pastor Scott, St. Paul Baptist Church, is preaching on the 1619 project
that's
last?
Robert Scott in Charlotte. He's
Oh,
doing a
okay.
whole series on
Oh,
this.
wow. Okay.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't even know he was doing that series, but I would hit Pastor Scott up and because that's good. That's good. That is a coincidence. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a coincidence. Cool. That's good. Would you say this represents the doctrine of white supremacy? Yeah, you could say that. You could say that. That this could represent the doctrine of white supremacy. That they have, and you see it's in print that they co-opted Genesis 1:28 for themselves in 1600, saying, "Hey, yeah, we're the ones because y'all are lazy, because y'all aren't doing it the way we want you to do it. Um, we're God's chosen." And it's no different from what we see throughout the biblical narrative, where the Israelites, where the descendants of Abraham are the Israelites in particular, are often just cast aside, treated as stepchildren, even though God said these are my kids, these are my kids. You know, when we talked about the sons of Noah and Ham and Japheth and all of them, we talked about the fact that, this group that comes from Japheth, they kind of created their own little narrative here, and have made it into what we want it to be. It's unique, but it's something that I think the church has to um, address, tend to deal with. It's one of the things I'm trying to talk about this month on Sundays. We shall overcome. just talking about what it is, what it's about.
Yeah.
'Cause it is important. Um, so yeah, I will. I'm gonna put a link in the chat as promised, um, so that folks can see where to purchase this book. Um, I'm not used to doing these things.
The
And,
self
and
promotion.
I'm really not. I'm like, it's totally against,
Yeah, yeah. No, I get it. I get it,
so I
man.
think you should be able to see that, Doc. And so I don't know if that goes to you or everybody or what, but
Yeah, it'll
uh,
go to everybody.
okay, all right. And so that's the book. You can actually read a little blurb about it there, and yeah, uh, I'm excited about it coming out in the not so distant future.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. Absolutely. Man, we celebrate Dr. Wallis Baxter. Come on, show him some love. Give him a little clap in the comments and in the reactions. Show your brother some love. We are so grateful that you took the time to be here with us today. This is good stuff. And it was a great way to close out our Black History series, no doubt about it.
I'm glad.
Thank you, Dr. Baxter. This dude is legit, y'all. This dude is legit. But I'm gonna tell you something, Dr. Baxter, in terms of that self-promotion,
Yeah.
right? Like I haven't, you mentioned the Shalom Life. Like I
Yeah.
haven't done like like I hadn't shown the video at church that's on the website. I haven't promoted
Uh-huh.
on church social media. It's just something about self-promotion that's
Yeah.
it's
I
kind
love
of
it.
it,
Yeah.
I know some folk to do it really well, but
Right. Right. Yeah.
and they humble people, they just know how to do it. I'm working to get there. Y'all
Yeah.
pray for me and Dr. Baxter
Yeah.
that we
Pray
can
for
get
us,
to the
because
point where we can pump
yeah,
ourselves up for
it,
the
it,
bigger
it
cause.
right. I just sit there and they're like, man, why you ain't tell them folk that? I'm like, look.
Yeah, we need help, y'all. Pray for us. Pray for your people. So listen, y'all, thank you so very much. We appreciate you being with us tonight. So next week we're actually back in person. Um, we're on our social media platforms as well. So I'll be back teaching. We're excited about that. Looking forward to it. And we're gonna do our best, right? So we're back in worship on Sundays. Our Omicron concerns have seemingly diminished, and we're doing this, right? So we thank you for all your support. We thank Dr. Baxter again and everybody for this wonderful month. Love you guys to life. We stand on the cross, the true cross, and we will see you on the next time. All right. Blessings and peace, everyone. Take care.